Good afternoon. Welcome to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Wednesday, December the 24th, 2014. Before I get into my show today, I want to wish everybody happy holidays, safe and prosperous holidays, and going into the new year. Now, my show today is going to be about the quarterback position, particularly two quarterbacks in the NFL and two quarterbacks in college. And what do I think they need to do to be successful? Two quarterbacks in particular in the NFL is this. RG3 in Washington, Johnny Manziel in Cleveland. And let's start there. Let's start with RG3 in Washington. Now, if you watched an earlier segment of one of my shows, I talked about how I felt that hiring Jay Gruden, to coach the Redskins was a mistake based off the fact that his system is a lot different than what RG3 runs. I think, to be really honest with you, RG3 would have been better off in a system similar to what Russell Wilson runs, because that system is more conducive for a successful RG3 than the system that Jay Gruden wants. And after I had mentioned in my previous podcast or segment about how I thought it was a mistake to bring in Jay Gruden on the Redskins as the head coach, he subsequently benched RG3 for Colt McCoy. And basically, Colt McCoy got injured, so therefore RG3 had to come back in. And basically, ever since RG3 has come back into the game, he's looked a lot better. He looked much more confident. So it looks like they're doing a little bit more of what he did when he was successful in 2012. And I think he needs to do that in 2015. But here's what I'm going to say to RG3. If you want to be a pocket quarterback, see, folks got to understand something. When we talk about pocket quarterbacks, the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Brady's, the Drew Brees, these are the elites of the elites. Now, and they're Hall of Famers, particularly Brady and Manning. I think Drew Brees is also one, but, some people may debate that. That being said, okay, these three are elite quarterbacks. Now, the reason why they're elite, and the media with this whole thing about the pocket passes this, pocket passes that, you can't win without passing in the pocket. Listen, folks, here's why they're able to be successful. Each three look at their offensive line, particularly Manning and Brady's offensive line, top notch. Because you got to understand something. They don't have the mobility, particularly Brady and Manning, don't have the mobility to run like RG3, Kaepernick, Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, etc., so on and so forth. And so, therefore, they got to stay in the pocket. So a defense knows where they're going to be at. It's just getting to them is the key, or the difficult part, because these teams have elite offensive lines or top-notch offensive lines. Notice that's why they can be who they are. When these guys don't have the offensive line or their offensive line is struggling, they look like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. Let's take Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning is definitely Hall of Famer. He's going to go down as one of the best quarterbacks of all time, yada, 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 yada. But you saw how in that Super Bowl, Seattle destroyed him. Because why? The offensive line could not protect him. And when the offensive line cannot protect him, he's a sitting duck because they don't have to worry about him using his legs. So if Washington is going to have RG3 be a pocket quarterback, which is what RG3 says he wants, then the first thing Washington better do this offseason is, before you do anything else, upgrade that offensive line. Because unless you do that, you're not going to get a success out of the pocket quarterback regardless who's quarterbacking the team. Because Kirk Cousins and Colt McCoy are pocket quarterbacks. Yet, if you look at, they were no more successful than Griffin. The reason being is because they could not be protected. And if you cannot protect your quarterbacks, folks, you're going to have problems. So the first thing Washington needs to do is rebuild their offensive line. The second thing is they need to upgrade areas of their defense, particularly their defensive line and their secondary. And also get rid of that head coach, Jim Haslett. He is terrible, folks. I'm sorry. You're not going to win with Jim Haslett. No, look, it is what it is. Okay? I'm not even going to state no more on that because there's no need for me to. Just get rid of Jim Haslett. But upgrade your defensive line and upgrade your cornerbacks. So there's 3 areas of need that Washington must address this offseason if you want to improve for next year. And now, before I get over to Manziel, let me dispel another myth that is out there that the media or people in the media or people in the game try to perpetrate. And that is this. Well, we need to bring in a quarterback to compete with an RG3 or to compete with a Jay Cutler or to compete with this guy or compete with that guy, suppose the elite quarterback. Let me state this. Where are you getting these quarterbacks from? You're not, listen, all the quarterbacks on the waiver wire, there's a reason they're on the waiver wire, folks. These are mediocre quarterbacks, okay? These quarterbacks can only take you but so far. They are what they would call backups. Some better than others, but they're still all, at the end of the day, backups. They're not long-term solutions. Even Mike Vick, who is a capable starter at this stage of his career, is really a backup. He can give you some spot starts. He can carry you for a few weeks, but don't ask him to carry you for an entire season. Okay? And to me, he's the best of the bunch. But whether you talk about Mark Sanchez, Sam Bradford, whoever else, these are not viable. You're not winning a division or making a playoff with these guys now. Now, but Mark Sanchez made the playoffs in 2009 and 2010. You know, as a matter of fact, made it to the NFC Championship. Yes, he lucked up because why? Everything around him was perfect. Defense, offense, special teams, everything fell right. That's why he got as far as he did. So, yes, if you're going to have that type of team, then maybe you can get away with those quarterbacks for a season or two. But they're not what you would call franchise guys, long-term solutions. And if anything we've learned in the NFL is this. You better have a franchise guy. He don't have to be elite. But he better be very good, at the very least, very good. You got to have a franchise guy if you're going to compete in the NFL in these divisions. Because, come on, let's take the NFC East, which is what we're talking about with the Redskins. You're in there with Eli Manning and Tony Romo, 2 potential future Hall of Famers. And you're going to tell me you're going to try to compete with a Mark Sanchez? You tell me you're going to try to compete with the Sam Bradford? Let's speaking about Mark Sanchez, and this is not to rip on Mark Sanchez, because I like Mark Sanchez. Nice player, nice guy. But you saw Chip Kelly, who's supposed to be this offensive guru. You saw what happened when Mark Sanchez, given enough games, when he was in there, you saw how Philadelphia now fell apart. And mainly because their offense fell apart, which is also affecting their defense. Because in Chip Kelly's type of scheme, because they go so fast, they really got to put points on the board because their defense is only going to hold for so long because you're not giving your defense time to rest. That's the problem with going at that breakneck speed they go at. So you really got to put points on the board to be effective in Chip Kelly's team or Chip Kelly's offense. So that being said, so if Chip Kelly could not win with Mark Sanchez, what makes Jay Gruden think he's going to win with Mark Sanchez? If St. Louis, right now, even with Sam Bradford has been there for the last 5 years, guess what? They finished last practically for the last 5 years. There's a reason why. First of all, he's never healthy. That's the first problem. So now you're going to bring him here to compete with an RG3 who's, come on. And the second of all, even when he's been healthy, he hasn't really been that good. So since he hasn't been that good, nor he's been healthy, these are not folks. There's a reason, like I said, they're on the waiver wire. These are what you would call backups. Now, if you're looking for backups, then yes, the waiver wire is the place to go. But if you're looking for franchise quarterbacks, there's only one of 2 ways you're going to get them. Either via trade or via the draft. Now, let's talk about trades. First of all, nobody's giving you a franchise quarterback in their prime. They're not going to do it. No one's trading you a franchise quarterback in their prime. It's just not going to happen. Because franchise quarterbacks don't grow on trees. So nobody is giving you one in their prime. You might get a guy who's at the end of his career, like say a Drew Brees. Now, he might be good for you for a year or two, but then you're going to be looking for a quarterback again. Okay? But nobody's giving you a player, a quarterback, a top-notch quarterback in their prime. They're not going to happen. So, therefore, trading for one is not really a realistic scenario. So, the only other way you're going to get a viable starter, which we could say, oh, my God, this guy is a potential franchise guy, is through the draft. Now, if you're going to get those through the draft, let me explain something to you. If you're not one of the worst teams in the league, good luck finding those players in the draft. Because those type of guys in the draft are usually the first, second, third picks. They're not usually in the middle to late rounds. Now, occasionally somebody falls through, like a Teddy Bridgewater or Derek Carr. These are potential franchise quarterbacks. You can look at their game and tell them they're potential franchise quarterbacks. Okay? Occasionally those guys fall through. But again, there are more misses than hits when you see guys fall that far. Okay? And you just don't know. So when I hear guys, well, bring in a player to compete with an RG3 or to compete with Jay Cutler, good luck finding that quarterback who's going to compete with that guy. Come on, there is no real competition. Not at the quarterback position, folks. You either have the guy or you don't. Okay, and I think RG3 can be the guy, but we don't know. We have to see more. Now on to Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football. Here's what I'm going to say to you, buddy. I like you personally, but you better spend this offseason really working on your game. See, everybody want to talk about, film study, this, that, and the other. Film study alone is not going to help Johnny Manziel. Here's what Johnny Manziel needs to work on. And it's really the same thing RG3 needs to work on. Fundamentals. Footwork, okay? Knowing how to throw off your back foot, knowing how to transfer the pressure from your back foot to your front foot to properly throw, knowing where to throw, when to throw. So part of it is film study, but a lot of it is fundamentals, techniques. Okay? You really have to work on that because you're no Michael Vick. You're not running by guys. You're not outrunning guys. So I'm referring to Johnny Manziel. You don't have the speed to run by guys. So you're not going to outrun guys. So that's not going to work for you. Okay? You don't have the arm to throw the deep ball. So teams are not fearing you throwing the ball deep. Okay? So the best you can do is those short to intermediate ranges. You really have to improve your game in those areas. And to me, I think he can. You're just going to have to put in a lot of work, which means less time at the basketball games, less time at other social events, and more time working on your progressions, working on your game, working with the other receivers. You really could have to spend a lot of time in the Cleveland complex this offseason because you got a lot of work. Because I haven't seen not one thing where we could say, okay, we can hang our hat on this with him. Okay, this is one thing he does well. Let's do this. There's not one that I have seen. So until we see those things, you're going to always be what they call a project. And you got one more year to really show people that, you can be an NFL quarterback in this league. If not, yes, Cleveland is going to be looking for a new quarterback. Now, when I come back, I'm going to talk about two particular college quarterbacks. Well, before I do that, and it just dawned on me, I've been meaning to talk about this whole Jay Cutler situation there and the mess that's in Chicago. Before I get to those college quarterbacks, it is a real mess there in Chicago. Phil Emery, who's the GM of the Bears, and the head coach, Mark Trestman. It sounds like they're going to both be relieved of their duties. At the very least, Trestman will be relieved of his duties at the end of the year. There is a big mess there in Chicago, and here's why. You try to build this team around Jay Cutler, to have Jay Cutler as a leader of this team. And the one thing you should have learned is Jay Cutler is not a leader. Jay Cutler he's best as one of the guys. He's not a leader. You got to treat Jay Cutler the way Dallas treated Tony Romo. You got to stop him from hurting himself. Because Jay Cutler is Jay Cutler's own worst enemy. Just like Romo was Romo's worst enemy. So what did Dallas did? Dallas went and upgraded the offensive line, and then they said, we're going to turn around and give the ball to DeMarco Murray, and we're going to rely a lot off the running game, time of possession. In other words, high percentage passes that even you can't screw up. That's what the way they need to do Jay Cutler. But it will not work with Trustman because, first of all, Chicago is a disaster. They're not only a disaster on the offensive side of the ball, they're a disaster on the defensive side of the ball. And yeah, all of you guys who wanted Lovey out of there, Lovey Smith out of there, now you're having real buyer's remorse because now you're realizing the grass isn't always greener. So when you got a top-flight head coach who knows what he's doing, he might not win every year, but you might want to stick with him. Because it's not easy replacing a good head coach. Because now you see they went really the entirely different direction, and it has really blown up. And this is where Phil Emery needs to answer for this. Because basically he gave Jay Cutler this new deal, 7-year deal. And so whether he's on the team or not, $16 million is going to be eaten off of Chicago's books. But his reasoning or explanation for giving Jay Cutler this money was because, Jay Cutler has a winning record, so therefore he's an elite quarterback. Well, there's a lot of quarterbacks with winning records. That doesn't mean they're elite. And for that statement to come out of his mouth, he should have been fired then, because that tells me he doesn't really know what he's doing. And the fact that he fired Lovey, or had Lovey fired because Lovey didn't win enough games, well, Lovey, no matter whether you like the way he got to his 10 victories or not, he at least got 10 victories. The problem here is under Trustman, you went 8-8 one year, and now you've just gotten worse. You're going, as they say, in the wrong direction. And this team doesn't look like they have any hope. They lack leadership and they lack hope. And it's not going to happen with these two in here because you also had the offensive coordinator basically privately throwing Cutler under the bus by saying the Bears are having buyer's remorse, and then basically coming out and saying that he was the one who made the statement. They are a complete mess. So there needs to be a total overhaul there. But we're going to replace Jay Cutler, or we want to replace Jay Cutler. Okay, you want to replace him, but with who? Because, again, just like with RG3, Chicago got the same problem. Who are you replacing Jay Cutler with? Unless you're willing to blow the whole thing up, which maybe I would think that would be the best way to go. I would blow the whole thing up, maybe not tank, but be bad for a couple of years until we can get a new guy in here. But as long as Cutler is there, you got to find somebody who's capable of working with him, because you're not going to be able to find somebody again on the waiver wire to compete with Cutler. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That's not a realistic scenario. No one's going to trade a quarterback to you for Jay Cutler. It's not happening. A good quarterback to you for Jay Cutler. And you're going to have to then draft one. So that means the new GM or whoever is who's ever going to be running this team has to have a keen eye to finding that next guy. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there in Chicago. Now, when I come back, I want to talk about two quarterbacks in particular at the college level who's about to come pro. Welcome back to the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Wednesday, December the 24th, 2014. There's two quarterbacks on the college level that I want to talk about. They're going to be meeting head-to-head, head-to-head, because their two teams face off against each other on January 1st in the inaugural college playoff football system, okay, in the Rose Bowl. And that is Jameis Winston from Florida State and Marcus Mariota from Oregon, okay? And I'm glad that the college system or the college committee had enough sense to make this the prime game, the first game, for them two to match up. Because why? This is the matchup everybody wants to see. First of all the NFL teams that are in need of quarterbacks will be sending scouts to that game because they're going to be scouting really both quarterbacks. Now, that being said, this is an interesting matchup because Mariota is projected to be the first quarterback off the board, and Winston the second. And the only reason for Winston being the second is because of his off the field issues. But if Winston didn't have those off the field issues, most likely he would have been going first. But that being said, here's what has to happen, I think, in January 1st. If Mariota, because Mariota in particular, because there's enough body of work there with Winston where you kind of know what kind of quarterback he is, okay? He's already showed you he can win the big one. He won a national championship last year, okay? He beat a team that was actually better than him. With Auburn, they had a better team, in my opinion, than Florida State. But he beat them. So he's already proven he can do it against top-flight defenses. Mariota, not so much yet. Well, this is his chance, because really Florida State's not really that good. So he should be able to do well. He needs to do well to convince the scouts that he is worthy of that number one pick. Because if he struggles or he does poorly, he's going to drop in the draft. That's the way this works, folks. Fair or not, he's going to drop in the draft if he struggles and do poorly. Winston, you figure, is going to do well. He's going to do okay, at the very least. He might even throw you a couple, but he's going to do okay because that's just Jameis Winston, okay? But Mariota needs to play well. And personally, as a Jet fan, I'm hoping he plays well because I want Tampa Bay to take him with the first pick. Because if he doesn't play well, then he's going to fall, and then they'll most likely take Jameis Winston, okay? And then, it's going to be hard for the Jets then to draft Mariota because he's going to be considered, quote-unquote, damaged goods. Well, you see, that's why I want him to play well, because I want really Mariota to be the first quarterback off the board. And then hopefully Winston lands in our lap, the Jets, because we're no longer in a position to get Jameis Winston, thanks to our victory a couple of weeks ago against Tennessee. We are out of the number one pick or the number two pick. We're not in a realistic position to get that. Okay? So, because there's only one game left, and right now we're in the fourth slot. So we're not in a real position to get Mariota or Winston. So I'm hoping that one of them fall to us. But we'll see. Okay, then you have the other game, which is Alabama versus Ohio State, which is another good matchup. But for me, I'm really interested in the Oregon-Florida State game than Alabama and Ohio State, though I think that'll be a good matchup, but I'm more interested in the other game. But I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Take care and have a happy holidays again.